My name is Irma Quinn, 29 years old. I sit at the edge of my parents' polished oak table, smoothing the wrinkles from a black dress I bought on store credit because sometimes dignity needs a zipper and a hem. Crystal glasses send little constellations across the ceiling as the chandelier trembles with the air conditioner's hum. Dad circles the table with a bottle of wine that probably costs what I spend on groceries in a week, tilting it toward every glass except my water. "To Sam's incredible win," he says, beaming. "Youngest attorney in her firm to land a verdict like that." Mom reaches across the linen to squeeze Sam's hand. "We always knew you were destined," she says, the vowels polished like her nails. Sam glows and looks down modestly, the light finding every honeyed strand of her hair. "It was just preparation," Sam murmurs, "and a bit of luck." "Don't downplay your gifts," Mom interrupts, already refilling Sam's glass. "You were born for rooms like this." Born for rooms like this. It tugs at a thread woven through my life. Something about being born for the hallway, for the wings, for applause I'm meant to clap rather than receive. I sip water and gather courage. "The article said you connected with the jury," I say, careful, sincere. "That emotional intelligence is—" "Did you tell them the judge's comments?" Dad booms to Sam, cutting clean across my sentence like a paper knife. "What did he say afterward?" The words in my mouth dissolve. I've been here 100 times, an undercurrent running beneath their celebration, my own presence a shoal. They refuse to chart. My focus sharpens to small things. The weight of the fork in my fingers, the cold ring of the glass against my palm, the mantel clock's metronome heartbeat. Tick, tick, tick. "Kylie, pass the potatoes," Mom says, misnaming me by reflex. She catches herself. "I mean Irma." The heat in my cheeks flares. I pass the dish and breathe slow. I try again. "My department is implementing a new compliance system, one I helped design. We just cut processing time by—" "Sam's being considered for junior partner," Mom says, voice up a key. "At 32. Can you imagine?" Her gaze swings to me with that prelude look, the one that usually ends with advice delivered like a gift box that contains a brick. "And you know, Irma, if you'd finished your MBA instead of just the bachelor's, you might be further along." The MBA. I postponed when the late-night call came, her voice breaking like thin ice. The degree still waiting in my someday file folder while my savings softened month by month into someone else's safety net. "I'm doing fine," I say, steady. "Fine isn't exceptional, is it?" Mom sets her fork down with surgical precision. "Honestly, Irma, you're not even half the woman your sister is." Silence floods the room. Even the antique clock holds its breath. My glass trembles, a thin ripple skimming the surface. In that moment, something shifts. Not loud, not cinematic. More like the secret click of a lock you didn't know was on your own door. "Then let her pay the mortgage," I say quietly. Dad's fork clatters. Sam's champagne pauses midair. Mom pales the way paper does just before it tears. "This is hardly dinner conversation," she says brightly. "Who wants dessert? I made your—" "No." My voice surprises me with its calm. I slide my phone from my clutch. "February 15, 2021, I read. 2,500. To prevent foreclosure. Just this once." Mom stands. "Ridiculous. I'm getting—" March, April, May. My thumb scrolls. The column of transfers is a spine of months. 1,500, 1,200, 2,400, depending on the crisis of the week. "We've had temporary setbacks in the business," Dad says, jaw squaring. "You know that." 4 years isn't temporary. I turn to Sam, whose confusion is hardening into something raw. "Did you know?" "They told me they were helping you," she whispers. "That you were struggling. That family comes first." A laugh escapes me. Not mirth, air releasing from something pinched. "A daughter supports her family," Mom says softly, tears now flowering where the bright veneer used to be. "That's how we raised you. Family comes first." "Family comes first," I echo. The words taste like someone else's vows. The chandelier flickers, a moth or a surge. Tick, tick, tick. I feel a line drawing itself down my middle like a seam, before and after, old story and new spine. 84,000, I say, looking at no one and everyone. That's the total. Dad opens his mouth, but nothing competent comes out, only a sputtered preposterous that even he doesn't believe. Mom's tears salt her lipstick. Sam looks like someone replaced the map she's used all her life with an empty sheet. The room tilts slightly, as if the house is acknowledging a truth it's been holding in its joists. My childhood rushes back in flashes. The maple on the front lawn with the thick branch that was a horse and a pirate ship and a pulpit. The window seat where I read on rainy Saturdays. The hallway dent where a dresser once scraped the wall in a move we never finished. I remember the call too, the first one, my phone vibrating at 11:37 p.m. Mom's voice frayed. "We're going to lose the house. Just this once. Your father is mortified I'm asking." I didn't even ask what they'd done with the money before that. I transferred it, pressed the elevator button on my future, and watched the numbers drop. I did the same 3 weeks later. And again. I peeled my life in slivers to line the edges of theirs, convinced that love was a synonym for sacrifice and that silence was a form of grace. I ate noodles in an office kitchen while their Instagram showed a dinner at Marcello's. I postponed the MBA. Financial circumstances, I wrote to the school, while a glossy flyer for a condo I could no longer afford went from my fridge to the recycling bin. My savings became a tide chart I couldn't control. "You should have told us sooner," Dad says now, seizing on the one angle that restores him to author. "We would have structured it differently." "You structured it just fine," I say, quietly, reliably. I look at Sam, and invisibly. Sam presses her napkin flat. 84, she repeats, as if tasting a foreign number. "Where did it go? Exactly?" "Because the mortgage company emails me updates on rates. And some months you said," she stops herself, shakes her head. "I didn't know to ask." Somewhere above us, the AC kicks off. The chandelier settles. The room's sound returns in small bites. The fridge motor, a passing car, the faintest creak of the mantel clock's spring taking up tension. My pulse slows to match it. Tick, tick, tick. Dad swallows. "We refinanced years ago," he says, evasiveness wrapped like gauze around the truth. "There were fees. Business optics. You wouldn't understand." Business optics, a phrase the firm's brochure uses. The last time I visited the office, a ledger lay open on his desk, a line item that didn't match a mortgage due date, catching light in my peripheral vision before he closed the book with a firm palm. I filed that flicker away then. It returns now like a lightning insect in a jar. "Dessert," Mom says, voice brittle as spun sugar. "I made your favorite apple." I'm not hungry. I stand, the chair's legs whispering against the runner. My knees don't buckle. I collect my clutch, slide my phone inside. The air in the room changes in that small movement, as if the barometric pressure drops before a storm. "The next transfer won't go through," I say. Mom's hand flutters to her necklace. "Irma, you're not thinking clearly." I'm thinking for the first time. I look at Sam. "If you want to know the rest, I'll tell you. All of it." Sam nods once, eyes glossy, not looking away. It feels like a rope thrown across a chasm. "Sit down," Dad orders. The old command rips through the new air, but it has to travel farther now. It loses velocity. I don't sit. "I'll see myself out," I say. No flare, no door slam, just a steady exit. Each step the sound of a hinge re-welded in me. In the mirror by the foyer, I catch a glimpse of my face and almost don't recognize it. Not because it's hard or triumphant, but because it's simple. Mine. Outside, the porch boards give with the same soft groan they've always had. The maple's leaves whisper in a mild night wind. I hear laughter from a house 2 doors down, someone's dog collar clinking against a bowl. I inhale the scent of cut grass and distant rain and a sweetness I can't name because I've never breathed it without counting the cost. I text my bank and disable the automatic transfer. A blue checkmark arrives like a small lighthouse blink. Behind me, the dining room murmurs back to life. Chairs scrape, whispered strategizing, the clink of plates as if resetting the table can rewind the scene. Through the window, I see Sam's profile, rigid in thought. Watch her say something that makes Mom's hand fly up in denial. Dad leans in, voice hard, posture a wall. The chandelier throws its light like a net. For once, I'm not caught in it. Caught in A car passes and its headlights sweep the porch. For a second, the house is a study in shadow and lines, a draft waiting for edits. I want to believe this night will fix everything. It won't. But it has at least named what's broken. The naming is its own form of mercy. My phone buzzes as I reach the sidewalk. A voicemail lands. Dad's granite voice declaring abandonment, betrayal, duty. Another follows. Mom's tremulous tone pleading history, sacrifice, love. The third is a text from Sam. They say you're punishing them. What's happening? I type back without flinching. Ask them about the mortgage payments I've been making for 4 years. The typing bubble appears, disappears, returns. I don't wait for the reply. I slide my phone into my pocket and walk to my car. The night tastes like metal and rain. In the rear view, the house sits dignified and ordinary, as if it hasn't just swallowed 4 years of my life and called it dinner. I put the key in the ignition and pause, hands at 10 and 2, breathing through the thud of my pulse. When I pull away from the curb, I don't look back. At the first red light, a new message lights my screen from an unknown number. Irma Quinn, this is Marissa with Westlake. Heard about your compliance system. Would you be open to a conversation? The signal turns green. I take the call. The first morning after the dinner feels like borrowed air. I wake before my alarm, the thin blinds of my apartment letting in a blade of light that cuts across my bed. For the first time in years, there's no automatic transfer draining my account at dawn. My phone rests face down on the nightstand, silent except for the ghost vibration of habit. I stretch, but the weight in my chest hasn't lifted. It's shifted. Anger has muscle memory. It lingers in my ribs like an echo. At 7:12, my voicemail count ticks to 9. Dad's voice, then Mom's, alternating stone and silk. I don't play them. At 8:03, Aunt Margaret calls, worried about my episode. At 8:17, Cousin Alan emails that family is supposed to sacrifice. By 9:30, the phrase flying monkeys pops into my head, the way Jessica once described manipulative people enlisting others. I scroll, block, delete. Silence follows, uneasy but clean. At the office, I carry a thermos of coffee and the satisfaction that it's mine, bought with money that isn't already mortgaged to someone else's survival. My manager stops me at the copy machine. Nice work on the compliance framework, he says. The compliment casual but rare. Later, during the team meeting, he glances at me while talking about implementation success. That design cut processing time by 32%. Impressive. The conference room claps lightly, and I feel something slide into place in my chest. Recognition. A currency I haven't touched in years. But clarity doesn't pay tuition already deferred. That evening, I spread bills, old bank statements, and rejection letters across my dining table. The spreadsheet is stark. $84,000 gone. My MBA postponed twice. My credit stunted. My dream condo evaporated. I chew the inside of my cheek and wonder if freedom always tastes like iron. Jessica drops by with takeout cartons. She's blunt as ever. You canceled the transfer? I did. She studies me. And? How do you feel? Like I might vomit, I admit. That's withdrawal from enabling. It'll pass. She slides sesame chicken my way. What's next? I don't know. They won't stop. They're rallying the whole family. Then rally facts, Jessica says. Data over drama. Every cent. Every missed opportunity. She pulls a napkin, scribbles columns. Cost of tuition deferred. Compound interest lost. Equity not built. She taps the total, a number that claws my stomach. Look at what they've stolen. The next morning, I sit in a leather-scented office across from Martha, a financial advisor recommended by a coworker. She adjusts her glasses, flips through my statements, and exhales through her nose. 4 years, she says. $84,000. And you were never on the deed? Never contracted? No, I say. They called it temporary, just until Dad's contract came through. This isn't support, she says firmly. This is exploitation. The word lands heavy, sharp. She clicks through projections. If you redirect those funds toward retirement and savings starting now, in 5 years you could have... She swivels the monitor toward me, numbers rising like a tide. Tears sting my eyes. That night, I sit in the dark, phone glowing. My thumb hovers over the transfer app. The habit to press send is strong, muscle burned into my nerves. But I don't. I slide the phone away and fold into sleep without financial fire alarms for the first time in 4 years. The backlash arrives with morning. Dad's voicemail is granite and gravel. What you did is inexcusable. We supported you all your life. Call me back. Delete. Mom's follows, tearful. Honey, please don't abandon us. Delete. Sam's text. They say you're punishing them. What's happening? I type back. Ask them about the mortgage payments I've been making for 4 years. Her reply bubble appears, vanishes, reappears. Finally, I had no idea. At 6:40 p.m., pounding rattles my door. I look through the peephole. Mom clutching a photo album. Dad, rigid. My pulse stutters. I don't open. Irma, honey, Mom calls through the wood. I brought pictures. Remember when we carried you off stage at your first recital? We were always there for you. I whisper to the empty apartment, except when I carried you. The pounding stops. The silence is worse. My phone lights with calls from relatives I haven't spoken to in years, each message flavored with guilt. Aunt Gloria sighs about obligations. Uncle Pete suggests counseling. Cousin Lily writes, "They're heartbroken. Can't you forgive?" Jessica leans across our coffee shop table a day later. Classic flying monkeys. Deflect, defame, deflect again. She stirs her latte. They're scared because you broke the cycle. Stay the course. I nod, but my stomach knots. What if I'm the one breaking the family? What if I'm cruel? Jessica's eyes soften. Cruelty is stealing your future, not setting boundaries. The words wrap around me like a life vest. I cling. At work, whispers drift about a recruiter sniffing around. My manager hints at bigger roles. That night, I draft a resume update, fingers trembling, not from fear, but from the tremor of possibility. Then, like lightning splitting a tree, another message lands. A neighbor texts me a photo of my parents' house. A vinyl banner stretches across the brick facade. Congratulations, Sam, for saving the family home. The air leaves my lungs. I grip the table edge until my knuckles whiten. Rage doesn't roar. It goes silent, surgical. They erased me. Again. I open my banking app, scrolling through years of transfers. I open folders of emails, texts. Just this once. We'll pay you back soon. Family comes first. Evidence. Receipts. I forward them to a new private account. A digital dossier begins to form. My phone buzzes with the recruiter call, Seattle area code, a director-level role, double my salary, plus equity. The words barely penetrate through the fog of betrayal. Would you be interested? I glance at the banner photo again. Sam's name in bold red letters, mine invisible. My voice steadies. Yes, let's talk. Freedom has a new shape now. Not just financial, but factual. The truth has weight, and I'm done carrying it alone. The first box I packed wasn't books or clothes, but paperwork. Years of bank statements, printed emails, text screenshots, even the old foreclosure notice Mom had begged me to tear up. I stacked them neatly, spine against spine, like soldiers ready for deployment. The Seattle recruiter had called again that morning, her voice crisp, professional, promising relocation assistance and equity options. My body should have thrummed with excitement, but all I felt was the pulse of betrayal echoing through my veins. Seattle meant distance, freedom, a new skyline unmarred by banners crediting Sam for my sacrifices. But before I could leave Denver, I needed something more. Exposure. Not revenge, exactly. Something colder, sharper. Truth. I sat on my apartment floor, laptop open, creating a presentation. Title slide, 48 months, $84,000. Irma Quinn. I built it slide by slide, transaction by transaction, each payment date aligning with text that begged for rescue. On another track, I added photos. Dad's golf clubs propped against the dining room wall. Mom's anniversary dinners captioned blessed. Contrast sharpened until even I winced. At 2 a.m., I closed the laptop and stared at the dark window. My reflection looked back at me, drawn, but alive. For the first time, I had a weapon forged from their own words. 2 days later, the cream-colored e-invite landed in my inbox. Please join us in honoring Samantha's selfless dedication to family values, formal dinner, catering, celebrating her sacrifice. My fingers hovered over the delete button, but something in me resisted. They wanted to rewrite history one last time. I couldn't let them. The following week, I boarded a flight with one carry-on, a charcoal suit pressed to perfection, and a flash drive tucked into the lining of my bag. As the plane lifted, Denver's patchwork grid fell away, and for a moment I wondered if I was running toward or away. Saturday evening, I stood on the familiar porch. Through the windows, laughter mingled with the soft hum of classical music, Dad's curated playlist of respectability. Caterers moved like shadows. I adjusted my blazer, smoothed my hair, and knocked once. Sam opened the door. She froze when she saw me, eyes widening. "You came. Did you think I wouldn't?" Her lips parted as if to argue, but she stepped aside. Inside, the living room gleamed. Flowers. I knew they couldn't afford spilled from crystal vases. A projector screen displayed a looping slideshow. The Anderson family legacy of support. Guests filled the room. Relatives, church friends, Dad's colleagues. My parents stood at the center, champagne glasses raised, basking in curated adoration. Mom spotted me first. Her smile faltered, then snapped back into place. "Irma, what a surprise." Her voice rang bright, brittle. "We weren't sure if you'd make it with your busy new life." Dad turned. His practiced grin tightened at the edges. "Pumpkin, come in. We're just about to toast your sister's incredible generosity." I walked past them, my heels muffled by the expensive rented carpet. Conversations hushed. Aunts and uncles leaned forward, curious. I stopped by the projector and set my folder down. "May I add something to the presentation?" Dad hesitated, pride and fear colliding behind his eyes, but with an audience watching, he nodded. "Of course. Our younger daughter wants to honor her sister too. How wonderful." I connected my laptop, the screen flickered, then shifted. Title slide, 48 months, $84,000. Irma Quinn. "What's this?" Mom asked sharply. "The truth," I said. The first slide appeared, a spreadsheet of transfers. Dates, amounts, account numbers partially redacted. Each line aligned with a note. Emergency foreclosure. Insurance. Taxes. Murmurs rippled through the guests. Aunt Martha covered her mouth. "This isn't appropriate," Mom snapped, stepping forward. "Neither is lying to your entire community." My voice didn't shake. I clicked again. Enlarged text messages filled the screen. "Just this once. We'll pay you back soon. Family comes first." Sam's face drained of color. She stared at the screen, lips parting in disbelief. "They told me," she whispered. "They told me they were helping you." I looked at her. "Did they?" The next slide showed credit card statements. Golf clubs, restaurants, vacations. The room buzzed louder. Whispers bouncing like sparks. Dad's jaw clenched, voice low. "You're humiliating us." "If the truth embarrasses you," I said evenly, "that's not my fault." I clicked again. Slide after slide, I laid out the pattern. My parents shifted, their veneer cracking under fluorescent honesty. Mom's hand shook as she clutched her glass. Dad's eyes darted like a cornered animal. Then the final slide, the banner photo, bold red letters, congratulating Sam. Across it, I'd typed, "Who really paid?" The room fell into stunned silence. Aunt Judith stood. For years, she'd been Mom's staunch defender, always dismissing whispers of manipulation. But now she clapped, slow, deliberate, echoing against the walls. It's about time someone told the truth. Other relatives nodded, murmurs swelling. My parents shrank under the gaze. Sam crossed the room, heels clicking, and stood beside me. She didn't speak, but her presence was enough. For the first time, the golden child and the invisible one stood shoulder to shoulder. Mom tried one last time, voice trembling. "Family matters should stay private, Irma." "Private like the banner on your house?" I asked. Her face broke. The silence was a judgment all its own. I closed the laptop, gathered my folder, and looked out over the room. That's all. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. Sam placed her hand lightly on my arm. No words, just solidarity. For once, I didn't feel like the background character in their story. I felt like the author of my own. The fallout began before I even landed back in Seattle. My phone lit up with a chain of messages, half scolding, half pleading. Mom's voice on voicemail. You've destroyed us. Everyone's talking. Dad's text. You will regret humiliating your parents. Then another from Sam. I didn't know, I swear. But thank you for showing me. I'll never forget it. At my apartment, the skyline glittered outside my window, indifferent and vast. I set my suitcase down, pulled the flash drive from its hidden lining, and placed it on the counter like a relic. The silence of my home wrapped around me, but instead of loneliness, I felt lighter. For the first time in years, the weight pressing on my chest belonged to no one but me. 3 days later, my parents showed up at my door in Seattle. I'd barely had time to unpack boxes when the knock came, sharp and familiar. 3 wraps, Dad's signature. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Mom's eyes were rimmed red, a manila folder clutched in her hands. Dad's jaw was set, the rigid mask he wore before punishments when I was a child. This has gone on long enough, Xiaonaim, he said, brushing past me into the apartment. You've made your point. Mom followed, placing the folder on my counter. We had papers drawn up, to add your name to the deed. It's our way of, she faltered, making amends. I stared at the folder as though it were venomous. After everything, you think putting my name on the house fixes it? Dad's voice hardened. It's symbolic. You want acknowledgement? There it is. I shook my head slowly. I don't need symbolism. I need respect, boundaries, honesty. Mom's lip trembled. We're trying. Trying would have meant telling Sam the truth instead of staging banners. Trying would have meant asking instead of assuming I'd bleed myself dry. You're not trying. You're managing optics. The word cut deeper than I intended, and Dad's flinch gave him away. He'd used it once, at the firm, and now it hung between us like smoke. I don't want my name on your deed, I said finally. I already own my own home. What I want is for you never to ask me for money again. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mom blinked, stunned. Dad's hands curled into fists, but neither argued. When they left, the folder still sat unopened on my counter. I slid it into a drawer without looking. That weekend, I met Jessica for coffee. She listened, nodding, her gaze sharp. They're not apologizing, she said. They're negotiating. There's a difference. I stirred my cappuccino, foam collapsing. I know, but part of me still wants to believe they mean it. Jessica reached across the table. Hope is fine, but don't mistake performance for repentance. Her words stayed with me, echoing louder when Sam called the next night. Her voice was quieter than usual, stripped of polish. Leah told me something, she said. Cousin Leah? She said she had a medical crisis 2 years ago. Dad covered some costs, but the dates, Sam hesitated. They line up with some of the emergencies you paid for. I sat back, stomach twisting. You're saying some of my money went to Leah? Not directly, but Dad shifted things, juggled. He didn't want it public, so he used your transfers. The revelation landed like a jagged stone. Betrayal and compassion clashed in my chest. Leah had been sick, and I hadn't known. My money might have helped her, but without my consent. The theft wasn't just financial. It was of choice, of agency. That night, I pulled old statements again. 2 line items stood out, bridge loan and CL coverage. I'd assumed they were mortgage fees. Now they glared at me. Proof of redirection. Proof I was a silent donor in a secret cause. My phone buzzed with another recruiter email. Formal offer, Seattle, director title, a salary that made my breath catch. Opportunity was opening, wide and bright. But family shadows lengthened too. A week later, Mom called. Her voice trembled, but not from tears. We want to meet, properly, with someone neutral, a therapist, no more performances. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Dad's voice came faintly in the background. If it will end this war, fine. I agreed, not for them, for me, for Sam, for Leah, for whatever scraps of honesty might still be salvaged from the wreckage. When I hung up, I stood at the window, watching the Seattle rain streak glass like silver threads. The city was alive, humming, full of possibility. And for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, the story wasn't ending. It was turning. The therapist's office smelled faintly of citrus and old books. Neutral walls, muted paintings, soft chairs placed in a circle that felt too deliberate. I sat first, smoothing the crease of my slacks, steadying my breath. Sam arrived next, her hair pulled back, face unreadable, but calmer than I expected. Then my parents entered together, Mom clutching tissues, Dad stiff in his blazer as if preparing for cross-examination. The therapist, Dr. Klein, introduced herself with a measured smile. We're here for honesty, no performances. Everyone will have a chance to speak. For a moment, no one did. The silence was thick, vibrating with years of swallowed words. Finally, Mom broke it. We never meant to hurt you, Irma. We thought we were holding the family together. You were holding the image together, I said quietly, at my expense. Dad shifted. We didn't want to burden Sam. She had her career, her reputation. And I didn't? My voice sharpened. You decided I was expendable, that my future could be collateral. Sam spoke then, her tone measured but firm. You used me as your shield and Irma as your lifeline. Neither of us consented. That's not love, that's strategy. Mom's tears spilled, but Dr. Klein intervened. Tears aren't a defense. They're an expression. Stay with the truth. I inhaled. What I need is simple. No more financial requests. Ever. A written acknowledgement of what I contributed. No more banners rewriting history. If you invite one daughter, you invite both, or neither. And if you ever choose to repay, it's private, without strings. Dad's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. Mom dabbed at her eyes. We can try. It's not try, I corrected. It's do. The session edged on, raw admissions surfacing like stones from soil. Dad admitted fear of failure, his business crumbling beneath pride. Mom admitted shame, the desperate need to keep status polished, even as cracks widened. Sam admitted complicity by silence, enjoying the pedestal even while sensing the imbalance. By the end, no apologies wrapped in bows, no tearful reconciliations, just truths, jagged and unfinished. Yet it felt more real than anything we'd staged in years. When we left, Sam walked beside me. You were right, she said. Boundaries aren't cruelty. They're survival. I managed a thin smile. They're also the only way forward. Weeks passed. My parents kept their distance, their silence a strange gift. Sam and I spoke more, hesitant at first, then easier. One evening over pasta in my kitchen, she admitted, I don't want to be their golden child anymore. I want to be your sister. Something in me loosened at that. Not forgiveness yet, but the seed of it. Seattle unfolded like a second skin. I led my first financial literacy workshop at the community center, telling young women what I wish someone had told me sooner. Boundaries aren't selfish. They're the foundation of real relationships. One girl asked, but what if it's family? Especially then, I said, locking eyes with her. The words tasted like steel and freedom. Months later, I stood on my balcony at dusk, tea steaming in my hand. The city glowed beneath Mount Rainier's shadow. My phone buzzed. A message from Mom. Not a plea, not a demand. Just a photo of the maple tree in front of their house, leaves turning gold, and a single line. It was wrong to erase you. It wasn't an apology, not fully, but it was a beginning. I set the phone down, letting the quiet wrap me. For once, I didn't feel like half of anyone. I felt whole, and the future stretched ahead. My own, finally. 6 months later, Seattle had become more than escape. It was home. Mornings began with the view from my 14th floor window, the city unfurling beneath streaks of amber light. My job title now read Director. The promotion sealed with a salary I'd once thought impossible. In the evenings, I cooked in my own kitchen, signed up for hiking groups, even dipped a cautious toe into dating without the weight of secret obligations dragging me under. Sam visited one weekend, arriving with a carry-on and an uncharacteristically messy ponytail. We sat at a cafe overlooking Elliott Bay, sipping lattes in the quiet rhythm of sisters who were finally learning how to just be. I still can't believe they showed up with deed papers, she said, shaking her head. After everything. It was their version of an apology, I replied, watching a ferry cut across the water. And you turned it down. Of course I did. I gestured to the glass building that housed my condo. I already own my own home. What I need is respect, not paperwork. Sam studied me, then nodded. You're stronger than I ever realized. Not stronger, I corrected. Just done. That evening, I joined 3 friends for a hike near Mount Rainier. We laughed as we trekked through wildflowers. Rachel, the architect with the kind eyes, walking a little closer to me than necessary. I felt something stir in my chest, not the gnawing panic of debt or duty, but the flicker of possibility. At work, recognition became a new rhythm. Your compliance system won an innovation award, my boss announced one Monday, sliding the plaque across the table. Your leadership is setting a standard. I smiled, a real smile, as my colleagues applauded. For once, the praise didn't feel borrowed or conditional. It was mine. But family shadows still reached across the miles. One afternoon, my inbox pinged with a photo attachment from Grace, my old neighbor in Denver. The image loaded slowly. My parents' house, freshly painted, a new banner stretched across it. Congratulations, Sam, for saving the family home. My coffee cup slipped, crashing to the floor, hot liquid burning my feet. I sank to my knees, staring at the screen. Rage surged, cold and pure. They hadn't just erased me, they'd rewritten history entirely. I opened the folders I'd curated. Bank transfers, texts, emails, proof, years of proof. This time, I didn't cry. I assembled it methodically, forwarding each file to a secure account. Not for revenge, but for truth, preserved against their fiction. Sam called that evening, her voice tight. I swear I had nothing to do with it. They told everyone at church I'd been making the payments since you abandoned them. Of course they did, I said, a hollow laugh escaping. There's more, she whispered. They're hosting a family appreciation dinner to honor me. I closed my eyes, exhaling through clenched teeth. Send me the details. The cream script invitation arrived minutes later. Please join us in celebrating Samantha's selfless dedication to family values. My phone buzzed again, Jessica on the line. I told her everything, the banner, the dinner. She was silent a moment, then asked, "What are you going to do?" I looked at the flash drive on my desk, at the evidence glowing on my laptop screen. My reflection stared back at me from the glass, steady, resolved. I'm going to Denver, I said, not to confront them, to tell the truth. Saturday evening, I stood once again on my parents' porch. Inside, voices mingled with classical music, glasses clinking, laughter floating on curated air. I wore the charcoal suit like armor, folder under my arm, flash drive in my bag. Sam opened the door, her eyes widened. You came. Did you think I wouldn't? I asked, stepping inside. The living room gleamed with expensive catering and borrowed grandeur. A projector screen displayed a slideshow titled The Anderson Family Legacy of Support. My mother spotted me first, her smile faltering. Irma, what a surprise. Dad's practice grin slipped when he saw the folder. Pumpkin, come in. We're just about to toast your sister's generosity. I walked straight to the projector. May I add something to the presentation? The room hushed, all eyes turning. Dad hesitated, then nodded, trapped by his own performance. I connected my laptop. The title slide appeared. 48 months, $84,000. Irma Quinn. Gasps rippled. Mom's face drained of color. What is this? The truth, I said, clicking to the first slide. The room froze. Conversations that had been buzzing seconds earlier died in the air, as though every guest had inhaled at once and forgotten how to exhale. My spreadsheet glowed on the projector screen. Rows of dates, amounts, transfer confirmations. 4 years of my life itemized in black and white. Mom's champagne glass trembled in her hand. Irma, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time, I said, my voice cutting cleaner than I felt. Because while you've been raising banners and throwing parties, you've been erasing me. Click. The next slide filled the screen. Text messages enlarged for all to see. Just this once. We'll pay you back. Family comes first. The same words repeated in different variations, month after month. Gasps and whispers rippled through the room. Aunt Martha pressed a hand to her mouth. Uncle Pete shifted uncomfortably. Sam stared at the screen, her lips parted in shock, her face pale. They told me they were helping you, she whispered, loud enough for half the room to hear, that you were struggling. I looked at her. Did they? Click. The next slide displayed receipts, golf clubs, anniversary dinners at Marcello's, weekend getaways, expenses that mirrored the months I'd wired money to keep the lights on. Dad's jaw flexed. Stop this, he hissed. You're humiliating us. If the truth humiliates you, I replied evenly, then maybe it should. Mom's tears spilled, her voice breaking. We only wanted to protect the family. You don't understand how much we sacrificed. Sacrificed? The word tore from me like a spark. I gave up my condo, my MBA, 4 years of my future, Not for family, but for your image. The final slide appeared. The banner photo stretched across their house. Bold red letters read, "Congratulations, Sam, for saving the family home." Across it, I had typed, "Who really paid?" Silence thundered. Then Aunt Judith stood. For decades, she'd defended them, dismissed every whispered criticism. Now she began to clap, slow, deliberate, each strike echoing like a gavel. "It's about time," she said, her voice carrying. Someone needed to tell the truth. Others joined, hesitant nods, murmurs of agreement. My parents shrank beneath the weight of it. Sam moved across the room, her heels sharp against the hardwood. She stopped beside me, facing our parents. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her presence was enough. For the first time, the golden child and the invisible one stood together. Mom's voice cracked. "Family matters should stay private, Irma." "Private like the banner on your house?" I asked. Her face broke. Dad looked ready to shatter. The guests sat in stunned silence, their polished evening unraveling. I closed my laptop, gathered my folder, and straightened. My pulse thundered, but my hands were steady. "That's all," I said simply. And then I walked out, Sam at my side, leaving the room thick with truths too loud to ignore. The Denver night air hit me like a cleansing shock, cool against my burning skin. Behind me, the house still hummed with stunned whispers, the chandelier light spilling through the curtains as if the truth itself was too bright to be contained inside. Sam walked silently beside me down the porch steps, her heels clicking against the wood, each sound like punctuation on the story we had just rewritten. When we reached the sidewalk, she finally spoke. "I had no idea. Not about any of it." Her voice was small, stripped of polish. "All those years, they told me you were unstable with money, that they were bailing you out, and I believed them." I stopped, turning toward her, because that's the story they needed you to believe. You were their proof of success, and I was their excuse. Sam's eyes glistened, and I let it happen. I shook my head. "You trusted them. That's not the same thing." We stood under the dim glow of the street lamp, silence stretching between us. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like rivalry or distance. It felt like recognition. Back in Seattle a week later, the reverberations continued. Some relatives called, cautious now, their voices tinged with apology. Others stayed silent, unwilling to confront what they'd seen. My parents never reached out directly, though I spotted a Facebook post from Mom, "Family should forgive." Even Judas was loved. The irony wasn't lost on me. Instead of spiraling, I redirected. I threw myself into my new role, leading a team through complex systems that once would have overwhelmed me. Recognition flowed, but this time it wasn't stolen or redirected. At lunch, coworkers actually sought me out, asking for my perspective. I wasn't invisible anymore. Jessica met me for dinner one Friday, eyeing me over her wine glass. "You look different." "Different how?" "Lighter, like you finally stopped carrying everyone else's weight." I smiled, the truth of it settling in my chest. Maybe because I did. Sam called often now. She told me she'd confronted our parents in private, demanding answers they couldn't provide. "They won't admit everything," she said. But I told them I'm done playing their perfect daughter if it means covering lies. It wasn't absolution, but it was change. One Saturday, Sam flew out to visit. We cooked pasta in my kitchen, tomato sauce bubbling, while Frank Sinatra crooned from the speaker. At one point, she spilled wine on the counter, and instead of tensing at imagined criticism, we both burst into laughter. "Remember when Mom used to measure the pasta portions?" Sam said, twirling noodles onto her fork. 2 ounces for you, 3 for Dad, 1 for me. Because actresses need to stay slim. And now look at us. I raised my glass toward our heaping plates. Rebels with carbs. We ate, we laughed, we remembered. And slowly, something that looked like sisterhood began to take root. Months passed. I launched a financial literacy workshop at the community center, teaching young women what I had learned the hardest way possible. One girl raised her hand and asked, "But what if it's family who's taking advantage?" I answered without hesitation. "Especially then. Boundaries protect you, so love doesn't become obligation." The room was silent. Every head turned toward me, every pair of eyes wide. For once, I felt not like a cautionary tale, but like proof that survival was possible. Back on my balcony that evening, the sun melted behind the Olympic Mountains, painting the sky in hues of purple and gold. My phone buzzed, a message from Mom. Just one line, attached to a photo of the maple tree in front of our old house. It was wrong to erase you. It wasn't a full apology, not even close, but it was a beginning. I set the phone down, closed my eyes, and inhaled the air of a city where no one knew me as the invisible daughter or the backup plan. I wasn't half of anyone anymore. I was whole. A year slipped by, measured not in secret transfers or late-night pleas, but in milestones I finally claimed for myself. My savings account grew steadily, untouched by anyone else's emergencies. I enrolled in the MBA program I'd deferred for too long, the welcome email beginning with words I'd once thought I'd never see. Welcome back, Irma Quinn. At work, my compliance system earned national recognition. My name, not hidden, not erased, appeared on an industry newsletter's front page. My boss stopped by my office, pride shining in his eyes. Vice President isn't far off, Irma. You've earned every step. Evenings were mine again. I joined a hiking group, weekends filled with the crunch of boots on dirt trails and the sweep of mountain air. Rachel, the architect, often walked beside me, her easy laughter warming the silence between switchbacks. It was new, tentative, but for the first time, I felt free enough to imagine something beyond survival. Sam and I spoke often, rebuilding brick by brick. She confessed the weight of being the golden child, the pedestal that had been as much prison as privilege. They always said you weren't strong enough, she admitted one night over the phone. But you were the one carrying all of us. You didn't know, I told her. I should have asked. Now you are. And that was enough. One summer evening, Sam visited Seattle. We sat on my balcony, pasta bowls in our laps, Sinatra playing low. She leaned back, gazing at the skyline. I've been thinking of a trip. Not for work, not for appearances, just joy, us. Where would we go? I asked. She corrected gently. Where would we go? Sisters only. My throat tightened, but I nodded. For once, it didn't feel like a fantasy. It felt possible. The financial literacy workshops grew, word spreading. I stood in front of 20 women at the community center, teaching them what had taken me years to learn. Boundaries aren't selfish, I told them. They're the foundation of respect. Without them, love becomes control. A girl in the back raised her hand. But what if it's your parents? I met her eyes, especially then. When I left that night, I wrote in my journal, Year 1 of my authentic life. Underneath, I didn't list goals or achievements. I listed truths. That worth isn't measured in sacrifice. That love without respect is use, not love. That starting over at 30 isn't failure, it's courage. One evening, I found myself on my balcony again, the sky painted in golds and purples, the mountains steady against the horizon. My phone lay silent on the table, no frantic calls, no fabricated crises, just me, my tea, my breath. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for the next emergency. I was living in the present, my life. And it was finally, irrevocably mine.